Welcome to The Dealist, your insider's guide to navigating the complex world of M&A. My name is Catherine Ford, and in today's episode, we are going to explore how AI can help protect deal privacy, safeguarding transactions in the digital age. Joining me for the conversation are Thomas Meurer, partner at Hengeler Mueller, Pierre Zickert, a manager in Hengeler Müller's Legal Tech Center, along with Prakash Kanchinadam, head of AI and analytics at SS&C Intralinks. Join me for the conversation now. So thank you very much to all of you for joining this podcast. And we'd like to kickstart the conversation with a closer look at what privacy and security actually mean. Prakash, could you please give that sort of insight to our listeners?
Yeah, sure. So we're looking at security and privacy. From where I stand, actually, there are two very important topics. They're very important, separate but related topics, I would say. So here we are in 2025 talking about AI. You hear a lot of companies talking about being AI first. But I think being security first, I think, is an important aspect of it. You know, if you are security first, AI would follow very naturally in a secure and a private manner. But when it comes to security, I think it is the fundamental layer of, all the M&A transactions. I think if we were to do in a secure VDR, of course, but that would be the bottom layer if you would consider, security as an important layer. And I always look at it as a multi-layered solution when it comes to security and privacy. So there are several, when you talk to security experts, they always talk about a layered approach to security, which is what we try to follow as a secure VDR provider in terms of providing solutions to our customers in the M&A world. Privacy, on the other hand, maybe is more about, keeping your data private. It is a related topic. Like I said, once your data is secure, once there are no bad actors having access to your data, now we are looking at how do we keep your data private? How do we make sure that you have the right access, right controls? The folks who are the right people see the data and the controls around and access permissions, etc. Those involve data privacy. So we'll get more into it, but AI is a natural extension to that, and how AI kind of adheres to those policies.
Thank you very much. Thomas, I'd like to bring you into the conversation and ask you to take a brief look back on how were cybersecurity vulnerabilities specifically in an M&A transaction identified in the past? What were sort of the things that you looked at? What were the tools that you used?
Yes, maybe there are two things. There's on the one hand, the vulnerability of the target business and the vulnerability of the transaction itself. Imagine there's a leak and the transaction becomes public due to cybersecurity incident. So let me start with the target business. Previously, in the past, the scope of the legal or technical due diligence included a specific investigation on the IT system by experts. Yeah. This is a so-called pen test, where specifically trained experts seek to penetrate the system from the external. In addition to that, there are always technical and legal expert sessions where we discuss specific questions on cyber and IT security. And finally, the SPA may provide for specific warranties on cybersecurity. And all these measures, they are designed to assess the risk profile of the target company. So what technology is used to protect sensitive data? Has the target already been exposed to attacks in the recent years? How many incidents happened to date? How were these incidents handled in the past? What was the damage? And what, most importantly, what were the lessons learned? Mm. And as to the transaction itself, in the past, the community relied on certain tools, encryption of emails, using passwords for documents, or the most modern way is establishing a transaction platform where everybody has access, but this avoids that documents are being sent around that can be attacked by third parties.
Thank you very much. Now, Pierre, I'd like to bring you into the conversation and specifically ask you from a theoretical point of view, how can AI be used to identify those vulnerabilities that Thomas has just spoken about just now?
I think there are already a few things we can do right now at this point. Looking at into the target business, how can AI help us to screen for vulnerabilities? Well, with machine learning tools, we already use these kinds of tools to assess whether the provided data includes all the information we need to assess whether the contractual frameworks are in place to safeguard cybersecurity, or whether something is missing. In a case where there was an accident, we could screen the documentation and the communication, whether there was some wrongful behavior, and investigate what has happened and what measures have been taken to address these. And regarding the transaction itself, probably the first step to make sure that the data has not leaked is use valid and tested technology. So we do not use any sort of technology we've just heard of. No, every tool we use is vetted and is tested. That's probably the first step. And only use the tools when necessary and as much as is necessary. And as Thomas mentioned, the step by using transaction platforms to share information is probably a very effective way to make sure that the information is not accidentally sent somewhere and could be forwarded in addition to someone who shouldn't have received information.
So from a practical point of view, how do you actually go about building such a tool? Because it's all great to have these ideas in your head, but from a practical point of view, what are sort of the capabilities that you have to have in-house, the technological understanding that you need to have, and the experience that you need to have?
Well, I think everyone is probably screening the market, what's available. So do we. And on top of screening all the available off-the-shelf solutions, some probably will also start to build as we do. I think sometimes the off-the-shelf solutions are not sufficient. Then you start building your own applications. And probably what's for us the most viable way is to incorporate off-the-shelf solutions into your framework. And that's probably the hardest thing. You need to have a vision how you can make use of all those technological functions, the abilities that are available on the market, and imagine how this could be used for the work processes you have in your firm, which requires an understanding what you're actually doing from a lawyer perspective.
Thomas, I'd like to bring you in and ask you to sort of draw on your experiences on the transactions that you've worked at or worked on. Are there any specific cybersecurity risks that you feel AI is specifically or especially good at identifying versus sort of what we've seen in the past, particularly during the due diligence process of a transaction?
Yes. AI has become really a good supporter for legal due diligence, in particular in cyber security matters. And AI is able to identify relevant AI is able to identify relevant information, in particular if the underlying documents are drafted in languages other than English or the regular working language of the team. May I give an example? We encountered a data room where several sections were populated with non-English and non-German documents, and it was unclear to us if we have to retain a local counsel or a technical expert for that matter. So in the first step, we asked the AI tool to summarize the content of areas in general. And wherever we thought that there was information identified by the AI that appeared to be responsive to the information we were looking for, we subsequently asked the AI tool to create a summary and a translation of the specific document that appeared to be responsive. And finally, on the basis of that analysis, we jointly concluded with the client that no local counsel and no technical expert was required to be involved.
And I mean, that's I think a really wonderful example of the practical application of AI in that process. I mean, if we now cast our minds back, so in the past, what would have happened? Would you have had to actually get a translator into that document, have it all translated, then reviewed, and then made that decision? So this is an example of where it was just able to process this much more quickly, or what are the additional advantages there?
Yes, I think in the past, if we were not able to assess the content of certain sections of the data room that were not presented in English or in German, we would have involved a local counsel. And they would have set up a team, and then they would have analyzed the documents. And in this case, they would have come to the conclusion that it is not really relevant from the perspective of their law. Yes.
If I can throw in one more example to that, right, just to build on what Thomas was saying, translation is a great example because there are always cross-border deals, we are always working through. But the typical example I can think of is there are many parties coming to the deal room, and the seller has a lot of private information they want to withhold in the early stages of the deal. And AI does a great job with identifying the private information and then maybe redacting it in an automated way so that information is kind of shared on an as needed basis and in kind of ways where the privacy is also protected. So I just want to touch on that, where AI can play a big role in terms of masking that in very confidential information if they don't want to share in the early stages of the deal.
That's another really brilliant practical example. Thank you very much for sharing that, Prakash. Thomas, could I ask you also, can you walk us through any specific examples of how machine learning algorithms might identify hidden risks that you wouldn't be able to identify via traditional means in an M&A transaction? Are there any anecdotes that you can think of those?
Yes, and that I think is closely tied to the example we heard some minutes ago. And it's AI is not only able to identify private information. AI is really able to identify a certain area of content. So let me give you an example. There was a matter where we were asked to identify change of control provisions included in a huge number of supply agreements. And then we instructed the AI to review the data room. And within approximately 45 minutes, we were able to give the client a first indication, which included the types of supply agreements concerned, what specific suppliers used change of control provisions, and in what region. So literally, we were looking at the screen and could see how the chart turned red, and where we then could give a first indication to the client. And later on, we reviewed it in more detail by the team. So in essence, AI is not better than a human being, but AI may be used to avoid unnecessary involvement of experts where specific expertise is not required. That makes our work more efficient.
We're going to take a quick break, and once we come back, we're going to have a look at how AI is helping with data breach prevention and overall monitoring of data in an M&A transaction.
Intralinks Deal Center AI. Take the pain out of deal making with intelligent automation to power every phase. Transform your deal making with Deal Center AI. Intralinks. Go forward.
Welcome back. Prakash, I want to bring you into the conversation and talk to you specifically about what role AI is playing in creating a secure environment within virtual data rooms and how it differs from the more traditional approaches to security in that setting.
Yeah, definitely. So like I was saying earlier, if it's easier to think if you're a security first company, so that you already have some established security practices on the ground, which is exactly what we did at SS&C Intralinks. We've been a secure VDR provider for the last 30 years. So when we started on our AI journey about 6 years ago, it was a relatively easy path, I would say, at least an easy decision to bolt on AI to the multiple layers of security we had already had in place. I'm not saying it's an easy implementation from a security standpoint, but we had a very good solid background to piggyback on. So in software engineering, they always say keep it simple, but they also say simple is hard. So in this case, we kept it simple in the sense that when you're in a secure data room, the human in this case has certain security privileges, access controls, etc. So when we design our AI implementation, we made sure that AI actually follows, the human in this case, whatever access they have. And I say that it's easy, but it's also difficult in the sense it's dynamic because you may be having certain access to certain documents one day, the next day, for whatever reason, the administrator may take it away. And it has to adhere to those policies as they change from a day-to-day basis. So those are some of the things. But if you, from a very high level, in this case, the AI follows the human. I always say that the AI, the way we implemented, is almost like an invited party to the data room. Essentially, there are many, like I said, there are many deal team participants. AI is the virtual participant in this case, being an assistant right next to you, and it follows the security and the privacy that you have access to. Therefore, the AI which is assisting you will somewhat, mimic those policies as well.
I like this notion of an invited participant, a virtual participant that's along for the ride. Pierre, let me bring you in on this topic of data breaches and how AI can possibly support the detection of data breaches in that really crucial phase of a transaction. Can you share a little bit about what you're seeing in that particular space, what your experiences are there?
Sure. I think the data is usually in these scenarios stored in a transaction platform or someplace secure where you need to log in, and thereby authenticity of the user as well as whether the user is actually permitted to access the data is checked. And AI can help to monitor this access behavior. So, for example, if a specific user is accessing from an IP range that belongs to the United States and then suddenly accesses the information from Europe or from China, then that's probably something not right, because how can someone move so fast? And then AI can block this unusual behavior of accessing the information. Same goes for the behavior within the data room, how frequent, how fast the data is pulled. It doesn't need to be a cyber attack. Could be also someone who is systematically trying to archive for other purposes the information, and then AI can raise an alert or something else. That's AI for securing the data, but something one should also address is AI poses also lots of potential for those who want to camouflage the activities, because AI is used in lots of ways for phishing attacks or other things. So it's getting harder and harder to see who's trying to access the data in a malicious way, because AI is therefore also a powerful tool, and that's why we should always have the best tools available in securing the data.
Okay. Now, let's stay with the topic of sort of securing data. And one of the things when we had the conversation preparing for this particular podcast was talking about the challenge is in building an AI platform that will support your work, but not using live deal data. First of all, how do you build a platform if you can't access live deal data? What are the challenges that go with it? And how do you then sort of sense check that what you've built is actually appropriate for the application that you're planning to use it? Yeah.
Well, you can start with pseudonymized data, which is of course very, very hard. You need to invest time to create these data sets. We've done this. And with these fictitious transaction data, you can try a little bit. However, if it's not a real case, then motivation is always limited. Good news is that we do have clients who are motivated to participate in these scenarios, who are willing to do so. So lots of motivation to be involved. And then we can continue the journey, but the first steps we need to do ourselves. And therefore we need to invest time and need to work with other data, which we have to create on our own based on our experience. But I think that's what it takes to develop campaign.
If I could just sort of, I mean, you mentioned some clients that are being very cooperative. Talk to me a little bit about sort of the level of engagement that we have in this particular field. AI is obviously something that everyone is talking about. Everyone is very excited about. Everyone recognizes the potential. But as we're demonstrating in this podcast, there are challenges to it as well. Pierre, you talk about clients who are engaged. Can you give us a little bit more color around that?
But I think AI excites everyone, and the same goes for clients. Clients are also interested to see what the potential of AI brings, and there's a high interest. So it's for us not very hard to propose using an AI tool. I think there is a certain interest that proprietary data and other data that is somehow secured is not lost thereby. So training the AI with this specific data is always a concern, and that's something we always take very serious, and every vendor is obligated not to use this specific data for training purposes. And we also make sure that this is not happening. Clients are also concerned where the data is processed, but if we can address these concerns, and this is something we can, then clients are more than happy to participate in these exercises.
That's great to hear. Prakash, let me bring you in and ask you to talk a little bit about sort of safeguards and data governance frameworks that are important, that need to be kept in mind when we are talking about both parties accessing confidential information about each other. What things have you guys put in place to ensure that this is all protected as best it can be?
Yeah, just continuing on what Pierre was saying. Each week, I probably hear at least a couple of times from our customers when they ask the question, how do you train your models? How do you, what data do you use? Those are all important questions. We answered pretty much on a daily basis at this point. The data privacy I was talking about, that's paramount when it comes to AI. We do not use the customer's data to train our models, but we use foundational models, of course, and then we use our own data to fine-tune those models so that they perform at a very high degree of efficiency and accuracy. So some of the safeguards, I would say, there's this one word which comes to mind, which is tenancy. When it comes to customers' data, tenancies is a key word there, in essentially making sure that your data is your data, and your tenancy is maintained in a secure fashion. So at a very early stage, we make sure that our data model is constructed in such a way that that tenancy is actually preserved through and through at every transaction and every interaction, and therefore those same secure guardrails follow when AI came into the picture. Those are one of the examples I can talk about. The other example is, access controls, like I said, in the VDR, in the secure VDR, have been in place for a long time. And we made sure those access controls are actually translated to how the large language model also gets to see the data. Even though the large language models today are capable of answering any or most questions, most general questions, we made sure that we put in those guardrails that, it does not, first and foremost, does not answer questions outside of the data room, for example. And secondly, it does not answer any questions from a document which you don't have access to, you as a participant in the data room. So, those are some of the important, I think, safeguards which ensure, obviously, the security first, and then also the privacy, which follows.
Okay, thank you very much. Thomas, I'd like to bring you in for the last section of our podcast where we want to talk about sort of the need to balance between AI automation and human oversight. Where do you feel the line should be drawn between the AI or the automated AI security protocols that we have to maintain security of a transaction and human decision making when it comes to that part of the deal? Can you give us a little bit of insight from your perspective and your experience in that field?
Yes, sure. I think sometimes there's a misunderstanding as to what AI can do and as to how AI should be used. So some people think AI is able to review a data room and ultimately to deliver a due diligence report. And that's not the case. But AI may assist you in preparing such product. So what the user or the human being has to do is to break down the different steps required to come to the due diligence report. It's the decision of the user to use AI for every step where it is efficient and reliable, and where it is able to reduce the amount of burdensome work for the people on the deal team. So use AI for research, for drafting, for summarizing, for improving language, for translations and the like.
And how do deal teams maintain proper oversight? I mean, is this something where we're now going to have to insert a person whose sole responsibility it is to make sure that what AI is doing is in line with what the human part of the deal wants to be achieved, particularly when it comes to sort of sensitive transactions? Or what is the scope and the responsibility of the humans within the deal team when it comes to using AI?
Yes. What is a simple tool is to do spot checks, what the AI has done, and reconcile it to the data room. And then where we have good experiences, that you define a sample which is analyzed in parallel by a human being and by an AI tool. And then you compare the results. And in general, at the current stage, we use AI merely for the initial review and to identify the areas of concern. And once you have identified the areas of concern, then you have them thoroughly analyzed by human beings afterwards.
Thank you very much. Now, Prakash, Pierre, and Thomas, thank you so much for sharing all your insights. All three of you are quite obviously experts in the field of AI, but obviously quite a few of our listeners won't be as deeply embedded in the subject matter as you guys are. So for those listeners, what would you say are the key messages that you would like to keep them to keep in mind when they think back about this podcast? Prakash, maybe I can come to you first of all.
Yeah, first, and actually, I wanted to say what Thomas just said was music to my ears. When we are designing AI systems, we would love to, make sure that the human is in the loop. That was always our first principle. When we are designing our systems, we are designing AI as an assistant, not a decision maker, which has always been our guiding principle, if you will. So I'm 100% in agreement with Thomas, what he said. The human, of course, has to validate what the AI recommended. We also put in place where, we take the human feedback so that the models can improve. So all of those, are important considerations when you are designing applications where AI plays a big role. I can also see in the future, like as in the reliability increases, as the trust improves with AI, we can increase the level of automation provided by AI. But the example I give most people is, even if AI recommendations are 80% accurate, are proven to be accurate, that's 80% of the work you don't have to actually manually do. So I would flip the logic that way and see the brighter side of what AI can offer from that perspective. So with all the checks and balances in place, with the human oversight and the accuracy as it improves with the models learning from the human feedback, I think we have a bright future ahead with better and better AI interactions.
That's a lovely comment. Thank you so much. Pierre, from your perspective, what do you feel listeners should be taking away from this podcast?
I think it's a kind of a motivation. I think be open to new ways of working and to discover what AI is capable of. One just has to use it. And the more one is using it, the clearer the picture gets how you can benefit from AI. But therefore, you have to start using it. And I can just say it's available technology. It works, and just give it a try.
That's lovely. Thank you very much. Thomas, your final words.
Yes, I think I have one message to all who have a critical attitude towards AI. Rest assured, artificial intelligence will not replace the human being, but it will make certain human contributions obsolete, and it will make our lives easier. And always keep in mind, the user himself or herself will always make the difference.
Brilliant. Gentlemen, thank you so much for sharing all your insights and experiences and all for those fantastic anecdotes illustrating how AI is being used to ensure security in an M&A transaction. Thank you very much.